Thanks everybody for coming. Lee, why don't you go to the first page? We'll tell everybody what we're going to do for the next hour together. I'm Jen Faucon. I'm on the AMA board. I'm the VP of membership. I'm also a partner at Micah Consulting Group. Please put yourself on mute because we're going to cover a lot of content today. Please use the chat function to post questions. Dina will be keeping an eye out for us, and at the end we can get some of your questions answered, but also feel free to talk to each other. The chat function is always really fun on our events. Lee and I are going to chat about 45 minutes. He'll present, he and I will have a little discussion, and then we'll have about 10 minutes for Q&A. That's never enough, but we're going to try to get as many questions in there as possible. If you have any technical problems whatsoever, in the chat function under 2, just click on AMA Boston and you can direct any questions there. They can help you with your technical issues. And of course, tweet out. We'd love for you to be a part of the tweet discussion. And unfortunately, knowing how technology works, we have lots of beautiful video case studies, but I'm going to post the links in the chat as Lee presents so you can watch them on your computer. So we're not dealing with any of those video on Zoom. Forget it, never works. So we want to make sure that you get the best experience with some of the great case studies that Lee is going to show us today. So first, let me welcome all of our AMA Boston members. We're so grateful that you have stuck through us as we've pivoted to these virtual events. We're really grateful for your support and your participation. And we also want to welcome all of you from other AMA chapters. We know that we've had AMA folks from all over the country, and if there's any positive sign in any of this, it's the fact that we all get to be on each other's events and create a bigger AMA community. But don't forget that we have a new AMA benefit called AMA Perks, and you should be getting weekly emails with perks in your email box. The first one was on content marketing, and they just sent one this last week with a content marketing tool. Be sure to download that. Take advantage of it. We want you to get the most of your membership. So welcome for everybody who's here, and we're grateful for your support. But it wouldn't be AMA if we didn't also welcome all of our visitors. It's a great time to become a member of AMA Boston. We have a new lower membership rate. We've really been pushing for that so we can make it more cost feasible for all of you to join. We really aim to serve the greater New England area. And not only do we have these events, we have our monthly mingle, we have online resources and tools, lots of discounted training. So there's no better time than now to join. So we really hope that if you're a visitor today, that you decide to come and join our chapter. And many of us from the board are on here tonight. Many of them are in that chat room right now. Please connect with us. We're really here to serve you as marketers across New England. If you're interested in membership, give me a ring. If you're interested in anything, call Megan. But we're really here to serve you as the marketing community, and we work really hard based on the insights that you provide us and how we can best build this growing network of people. So say hi to all of us. We're here for you. Lee, you're a great Vanna today. Thank you. Lee's doing all the slides. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about augmented reality, which is, like, I always call it the cool shit, right? Like, I love doing augmented reality. We're going to aim to do 3 things today. We don't have a lot of time, so we're going to do our best to get all 3 things accomplished. One is Lee's going to show you, and you want you to see some state-of-the-art augmented reality examples across a number of different industries. So whether you're B2B or B2C or you have your own business, we want you to see this range of case studies so that you can see what could really apply to my business. 2, we really want you to learn how AR can benefit your customers and your business. Lee's actually going to show some case studies that weren't very expensive and could use existing content. So really think about, like, what your price point is or what your business is, and see if you can see how it could benefit the people you're trying to serve. And 3, how do you integrate AR into your marketing campaigns and your product strategy? Lee has a really great 12C process that he's going to show on how he integrates it into his marketing strategy. And meet my friend Lee. So Lee's really big shot in a, he's my friend and colleague for over the years. He's New York based, so don't hold that against him. No baseball jokes, Lee. He didn't even say it. He was going to say it.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah. He's a leader in digital strategy and product innovation. I mean, he has held some really senior positions at NBC Universal, Barnes & Noble. You worked on the Nook. You've worked at Hatchet Book Group. What I think is really amazing is you live at that intersection between business and technology. And what I always respect about you, Lee, is that you're able to make real complicated technology really user-friendly and approachable. And I think that's what people are going to really appreciate about having you today. And we're so grateful that you've come to our AMA Boston group. And also, right now, you advise on clients on product design, technology, and growth strategies. And I've loved some of your most recent presentations about augmented reality and business innovation, including why you need Bruce Lee to lead your innovation program, which was a really funny presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Lee, who's going to take you through some great ideas about how you can integrate AR into your marketing strategy.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Jen, and thank you for the thank you to the AMA Boston team for inviting me. And I am a native New Yorker, but you know, before giving any talk, it's always good to get the crowd on your side. And so I know many of you are from Boston. So although I'm a native New Yorker, my favorite American League team when I was growing up was actually the Boston Red Sox. And I'm not saying that just because this is AMA Boston. Jim Rice was actually my favorite baseball player growing up. So, and also Fred Lynn, he was pretty good. So, all right, why don't we just, you know, dive into it? And I think it's always good because I think on a poll that Jen and the team did that, you know, a fair number of you are new to AR, or maybe you've heard of it but haven't quite implemented it yet. So let's just start with defining augmented reality and also distinguishing it from virtual reality, as the two terms are often used together, although they are very different technologies. Okay, so augmented reality experience enables the user to see the physical world with a layer of digital information and interactivity overlaid on top of it. Virtual reality, on the other hand, is a completely immersive experience, and it puts the user into a 100% isolated digital world with no connection to the real world. Okay, so again, AR users view the real world and interact with digital objects, while VR users are in a completely digitally rendered world. Mm-hmm. Okay, all right, so you know, Hollywood movies often give a glimpse into what the future may look like and the technology that will be pervasive, right, at that time in the future. So AR has been showcased in many of the Marvel movies recently, and probably the biggest user and proponent of AR is Iron Man, right? And Tony Stark is constantly interacting with a variety of AR applications and interfaces to save the world and even the universe. And of course, AR hit mainstream consciousness in the 2002 film Minority Report with Tom Cruise. And that was a futuristic world that took place in the year 2054, where it showcased AR-enabled shopping and also AR-enabled personalized advertising experiences. So when the movie came out, everyone was amazed and wondered, wow, you know, what would it feel like to live in that futuristic world, and how far away is it, right? So the question now that we could ask is, well, do we need to wait until 2054 for all of those really cool experiences, or have we actually arrived at the future already? So the fact is that when you look at those scenes, they sound very futuristic, but you know what? We are all already using AR every day in our lives. It's already ingrained in it. People may not recognize it, but we actually are. So if you think about Pokemon Go, right, which came out in 2016 as the poster child for AR, that game, you know, in early 2019 had over 1 billion global downloads, grossed over $3 billion, and also had over 150 million monthly active users. So a lot of times when people think AR these days, they think Pokemon Go, right? Amazing success story. But everybody also uses Google Maps, right, for directions and to see a virtual route, to see what stores or restaurants are in the area. And then, of course, many of us, or at least maybe most of our kids, not necessarily us, but users are on the social media channels using Snapchat and Instagram filters to create fun photos of themselves, and then superimposing 2D and 3D artwork on top of it. So you can see in the lower right a beautiful picture of myself with a beard. I do not have a beard, as you can see, but through the filters I can, and a crown. I think maybe that's when I was watching too much Game of Thrones or something. So yeah, the fact is, it is ingrained in our world, and part of the reason it's ingrained in our world is because the fact is that AR-enabled devices are ubiquitous, right, via our smartphones and tablets. So the fact is, we all have the capability just within what's in our pockets already. And in addition to phones and tablets, AR glasses are making a comeback, right? So Google Glasses didn't get off to the strongest start a few years ago, but they are coming back from different vendors, including Google. So in 2016, there were about 150,000 units of smart AR glasses that were sold, and that reached 6.5 million in 2019, and by 2022, it's estimated to reach about 23 million. Okay, so we will see people yet walking around with AR-enabled glasses, and there are also headsets, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later. But for example, Microsoft's HoloLens is a very sophisticated product that allows for really more sophisticated AR applications, where you can touch and grasp digital objects as if is in real life, using your hands and your eyes and gestures. And that is gaining traction very much on the B2B side, and it's on its way. Screens. So many of us have seen digital screens in retail stores and also out-of-home events and activities. And what is not too far away is having AR-enabled contact lenses, and even, as I call them, bionic eyes. So just as cataract patients, who have sort of the cloudy lenses, they can receive artificial lens implants. There are already companies that are making good progress to design lenses that can support AR technology. So you can actually, in the not too distant future, put on AR-enabled lenses, and ultimately, not too far beyond that, will actually be direct implants into the eye. So the AR device world is constantly evolving. So the market, so the AR market is growing quite a bit. So this chart shows the global AR market. Currently it is about 10.7 billion US dollars in 2019, and you can see that it's projected to reach about 73 billion. And you can see the breakdown with North America, probably second, with Asia, the Asian Pacific region, a bit ahead. Okay, so there's a lot of growth here, and this number of 73 billion comes from all different types of devices, hardware, AR-related services. And the most significant drivers of this growth is the rising investment in AR by companies such as Facebook, Samsung, and Google. But of course, there's a lot of AR innovation taking place within business verticals, right? Retail, architecture, healthcare, manufacturing. So all of those are contributing to this large $73 billion number. So, and the reason it's growing, and there's a lot of momentum behind it, is because AR does deliver on multiple business goals. So from a marketing perspective, or from an organizational perspective, many of your goals may circulate around enhancing your brand image, right? And if you have AR, innovation kind of becomes part of that brand. Being able to increase awareness and reach customers, increase sales. How do you increase loyalty and retention, competitive advantages? So there are a number of business goals that you hope to achieve, and AR is able to do that because it delivers tremendous value to the users. Okay, sort of point number one. And I'm sure, I'll assume many of you have had an experience where perhaps the first time you used an application with AR, assuming is well designed, that might have been a wow moment. Like, wow, this is pretty cool. This company is really giving me a really interesting service. This is neat. None of their competitors do it. This is really memorable. And to me, those moments are when marketers are creating what I call surprise and delight experiences. And those are hard to create, but I think AR enables it. And so with the interactivity that you have, again, if you just think about Pokemon Go or Google Maps, engagement and repeat use, right? You're always going back. And the fact that you can personalize it by, creating your own content, all of the filters, or as we'll look at in examples, try out digitally, new shirt or earrings, that you can really personalize the experience. And with that personalization and targeting, it's a great opportunity and meaningful for marketers to send relevant targeted promos and ads, right? Because the users are immersed in the experience. And so it's just a natural thing. They want more content, right? Or they want another product or an upsell or cross-sell. So they're already in that mindset, again, which is sort of a unique opportunity. But that's where the AR experience comes in. It's a differentiator, again, in their minds. And certainly, and I'll talk a bit about this, and I know, Jen, you've seen this with your AR experiences. If you get a good one, the social sharing and word of mouth is off the charts because it's cool. And knowledge retention is really important from a consumer perspective, right? If you have product information, again, the retention is higher, but also if you have focus on training and education for internal purposes, retention is better. And there's a lot of efficiency and productivity, okay? Which could come in time savings. So that's one of the big things for shoppers. They're saving time. And then for internal training, they're also increasing productivity. So that's why AR, I think, is really powerful to allow, each of you to achieve the different goals that you have. So just a couple of high-level points before getting into some examples. The first is, and Jen mentioned this at the beginning, this is for every type of company, okay? Whether you're B2C, B2B, small business, medium size, large, it doesn't matter. You can have a small budget or no budget. You can still get started with AR. Okay, that's what's really great about this technology, and every industry can benefit from it. And as I go through these use cases, one of the things that I hope to convey with the examples is that you can look at the specific example and might be for a specific industry, but odds are that that example is also relevant to your specific industry because the ideas and the capabilities are portable. It's just how you apply it to your specific needs. And the last thing is a little bit of information on the different type of AR experiences. And I'll give examples and show each of these. But the first is marker-based experiences. And what this is that the AR experience on your phone, to activate it, it requires having a static image or a visual marker or target. Just different, different terms that you need to scan using your mobile device. So again, if you see a particular image, if it's enabled on your AR app, then the AR experience will start. So think of a marker could be an advertisement, right? Your print ad, or a photo or a page in a magazine, a poster on the wall, a QR code. And it's important to recognize that the image can be on a physical product, right, that you're holding or you're looking at, or it could be on your computer screen. So I think that's one of the things sometimes people don't realize. Basically, every screen is a target. So you're really reaching people on the web. They don't have to physically have the product. Markerless AR works by scanning the surrounding environment, and that activates the AR experience. So we'll look at a few, but that would be like, trying out furniture, placing a sofa in your home, right? There's no marker. You don't have an image on the floor, but that's called markerless based. And there is technology built in that will allow the application to sort of automatically determine a floor, the ground, or a table, so that the images aren't just floating around in the air, assuming, you know, that's not what you want. Location-based AR or GPS AR is when you can specify specific positions or locations or a store or a block that the AR experience will work in, and then you can target you know, the experience there. And what you'll see when we go through these examples is that there's all different levels of complexity. Okay, so the examples I shared, again, some I think are interesting, some I think are just kind of cool, but hopefully you'll enjoy, you know, each of them. And again, Jen will be posting the URLs for these in the chat, so I'm not, you know, playing any videos. So this first example is about augmenting your content. And I like to start with this one because everybody produces content. Right? At the end of the day, everybody is a publisher, because whether you are a book publisher or a magazine publisher or a retailer who produces catalogs, if you've got training guides or user manuals or produce ads, flyers, posters, handouts, all of that content can be augmented to bring it to life. So, so this particular use case is an AR project I launched towards the end of last year for a publishing firm that I was at. And we wanted to make a splash for 6 of our debut authors. So we wanted to really create a buzz in the marketplace, to create awareness and sales, but we also had additional goals where we wanted to strengthen our relationships, you know, with these debut authors, so a way of innovation, and also broadcast out to the market. The market would be agents and aspiring authors, right? It's a competitive industry. So we want to sort of let the world know that we're innovative, and that was another business goal that we wanted. So, so we started simple. We did a lot of prototyping before this, which had advanced things, but going with the sort of the crawl, walk, run approach. What the experience is this. If you look in the left-hand image, this was a book called Rage of Dragons, and we built this using Google Lens. So if you held up the phone, in the left, you would see a video played with the dragon flapping its wings and breathing fire. Then if you went to the back cover, up would pop a video from the author describing his inspiration for the book, a little bit about his background. And if you tapped on each of these, it would bring up a page on the phone that would have information where you could then buy. Okay, so fairly straightforward. But the cool thing is that we built these, launched these with basically a budget of $0. Okay, $0. All in, I think we probably spent maybe a couple $100 because the platform, Google Lens, was free. The content we already had, right? So that's just an important tip, is that creating content can be expensive, but we already had these videos that we were using, so we were able to repurpose them. Okay, and also, so the only thing we spent a little bit of money on was having a freelancer edit the video, just the dimensions so it would play properly. Okay, so this is one where, you know, huge success. I mean, the social media stats that we got and the engagement blew away any other campaigns that they had done in 2 years. And it was, I mean, there was just a lot of fun with seeing what was going on. And you can envision, if this were, you know, a children's book or a travel book, the different experiences that you could have, okay? Now, we also, I'll go through this one quickly, but there was another children's book that we had, and at the end of the book, it said to be continued in, and this is because there was an upcoming book that would be out, you know, in a few months. So by scanning this, up popped a fun image on the right, colorful, and from there, you are able to get free teaser content for the upcoming book. You could sign up for a newsletter to get a discount code. We also had promos of other related books from the author and also other products to buy. So I wanted to show this because this is just another example of this case. We wanted to enable contextual promotions. Okay, so the first one was content. This is promotions and driving sales. So here's an example for a museum. There's a painting, as you can see, those little circles. So those are just hot spots, right? And so, you know, you can tap on those hot spots, and in this example, it would pop up on the right information about, you know, a character or a scene or the location. But you could also bring up a video like the one I showed before, or an audio narration. So again, hotspots is something that's also very helpful, that you can put whatever feature or function you want behind it. And another example along this vein is to activate a floor plan or a map, right? So in this case, this is the floor plan for a museum, and you can see that it's AR enabled, so that you get little characters that are showing the sort of the, you know, the most prominent sculpture or statue. And then you can tap on it, and it enlarges, in this case, to a big blue dodo bird, and you can go around it and zoom in. So these are all 3D models. But the point here is, again, it may not be initially intuitive, but think about all the things that a lot of different groups could do. If you are in the tourist industry or the, you know, the tourist bureau, well, all those maps, whenever vacationers come, they can be augmented with this. And then you might say to all of those advertisers in the restaurants, hey, if you want your AR, you know, experience to show on the map, you know, it'll cost you something, right? So again, there are new revenue streams for sponsorship and advertising. But although this example is for a museum, you can take it into a lot of different businesses that have maps, expos, trade shows, etc. This is just an example that I did when with the team at Barnes & Noble. So this is an example of location-based AR where we partnered, in this case, with Esquire magazine. So Esquire magazine had an issue with, this is a few years ago, with Brooklyn Decker, if you remember her. She was a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model, was in a movie with Jennifer Aniston at that time. So they really wanted to promote it. So we created this AR application with them jointly, that if you were in any of the 700 Barnes & Noble stores around the country, and you had the app, you could take basically a digital selfie with yourself or your friends with Brooklyn Decker in multiple poses. Okay, so just fun, right? Just fun, certainly very viral, very shareable. So just, you know, again, another approach on using AR from a location perspective. Now, so, you know, AR is obviously making a lot of inroads and a big impact on shopping experience and sales. And I assume many of you, or at least some of you, have used these just on your, you know, for personal reasons. So, you know, AR really helps retailers not only enhance the in-store experience, right, with detailed product information and the ability to try and buy, but also brings the in-store experience into the home of consumers, where they can try things out at home. So just a couple of stats for you, and these were from a few years ago. So these numbers have probably increased. So this is from a study that was called The Impact of AR on Retail. So at that time, right, US citizens revealed that 60% of them have tried AR for shopping. 68% said that they would want to spend more time at stores or online if it included AR. 72% purchased products they hadn't planned because of AR. 40%, this is interesting, stated that they'd be ready to buy more expensive products because of AR. And 45% said that it saved them a lot of time. Okay, and again, those numbers are probably a little bit higher now. So if you look at these, you're probably all familiar with the concept of the digital furniture. But one data point would be one large interior design retailer who had over 300,000 SKUs. They reported that 50% of their shoppers who bought one of their products had used AR, had used their AR app to preview the items, 50%. Now, buying a car is obviously really stressful. So, you know, these days at some dealerships, you can walk in, you can check out the car, you can visualize it with different exterior colors, different, you know, hubcaps, interior options. But what's really neat is it also shows hard to describe features. So the AR can really help a customer visualize how collision warning works, right? Hard to picture with someone describing to you, but with AR, you can visualize it through videos and images. And safety features. Safety features, I don't know for everyone else, but for me, puts me to sleep. But if you have sort of a pretty cool, frankly scary video, it can really hammer the home of safety features. So, and of course, the fact that you can visualize a car in your driveway kind of, again, just makes it a little bit closer to being real. And from a dealer perspective, this is great for training their sales staff, and you can also update information easily if specs change, etc. All right, so some of you may have tried some of these AR applications where you can try on shoes and glasses, right, change different colors, different designs. So there was one study from 2017, and what it said is that regarding product types for which U.S. for which U.S. internet users want to shop using AR. Okay, so this is what's most popular for U.S. internet users in terms of AR shopping. So 60% at that time said furniture, 55% said clothing, 39% said groceries, shoes at 35%, makeup and jewelry both at 25%, so a lot of cosmetics and fashion, and toys at 22%. Okay, so this kind of gives you a sense as to where the hot spots are. Now, these AR experiences are really important now in the age of COVID, right? So if you think three things with COVID: social distancing, which means that you don't want to be talking to sales reps, right? 2, you're not supposed to touch anything, right? So you definitely don't want to touch anything that other people have touched. 3, you're not supposed to touch your face, right? Keep your hands away from your face. Safety first. So this screenshot here in the bottom third, this third image is basically an augmented reality mirror that allows a customer to use it, and they love it because now they don't need to talk to sales reps, the self-service, right? They can automatically detect what you look like, so suggest things. So you don't need to talk to a sales rep. You don't need to touch your face anymore, right? With different makeup, and then you're just safe. Okay, so another benefit in the age of COVID. Augmenting your construction project, if you're on the B2B side, or if you are a home doing a home renovation, it's just amazing now that you could actually do a walkthrough of an empty space and see an entirely furnished apartment or building at scale. And that's the main thing, it's at scale. So you can really see it. And then of course, if you wanted to swap out a sofa or change the paint on the wall, you can do that. So, so this is a big area. So this one is a fun one. Jen and I think this is one of our favorites. So this, when I first heard of this, I was like, this is an example of real innovation. So, so Home Plus, this is in South Korea, was the #2 grocery store behind eMart. And they wanted to gain market share, but they didn't want to really acquire more physical stores and the increased cost. So they had a mission and a question: could we become #1 without actually increasing the number of stores? And so, you know, in South Korea, right, like in many countries, people work really hard, and grocery shopping is basically a chore at the end of the day. So they came up with the idea of, let's bring the store to the people at a place where is convenient for them or when they have idle time. So they started in the subways. So this image on the left is basically, they replicated through an AR application the actual store display and all of the merchandising, okay? Put it into the subways, and then each of the images, like on the right, had QR codes. And so if you scan the QR code, you bought it while you were waiting for the train, and possibly by the time you get home, your groceries would be there waiting for you. So just huge time saver, huge benefit. This is just a fun one, okay? So, so this is a company called Yuru Sports in Japan, and the founders there, they wanted to remove barriers to participating in sports, right? I mean, you don't have to be, you know, a great athlete to want to play and to compete, or if you might perhaps, you know, have a disability, or due to distance, you don't really have a place to play. So they came up with some ideas on creating AR games, and this is just a fun one, right? In this is basically participants are racing to see how many times they can move their digital eyebrows up and down. So all they have to do is basically, download an app and you get all these face effects, and that's what they're racing for. So for 30 seconds, who's got the most? Just for fun, right? So, I mean, from a marketer perspective, hey, depending on what you're in, maybe that's a thing to sponsor, or maybe this is a type of game to build, right? But just, fun and engaging and interesting, and certainly eye-catching. Okay, so another term, I'm going to talk about two quick things that are sort of up and coming. So one is mixed reality, which from a definition perspective can be thought as combining AR, the best of AR and the best of VR. Sometimes it's also thought of as just a significant enhancement on AR. But what mixed reality does is, and you can see from these images, is it allows the user to be in the real world, but to interact with virtual elements like they would in the real world. So you're not tethered now to your phone or your tablet. You're actually using your hands to push a digital button, or you're using your eyes or gaze to control an interactivity, or your voice. Okay, so this is then where you think about these scenes. This is then sort of the next level. And there are companies working in this area. Microsoft HoloLens is probably the most prominent, but Lenovo and Samsung are there. And it's still early days, right? I mean, all this technology is new, but this is, it's on the bleeding edge. But it's making progress and a lot of usage in certain B2B markets, especially healthcare and manufacturing, where they're able to see a lot of benefits, especially in the areas on hands-on training. Okay, so if you think about, in healthcare, a medical student, right, who is, who needs to, learn how to be a surgeon in the future. So they might watch a live surgery, right, that a experienced surgeon is performing, and then they practice on a cadaver. Now with this, you can have a mixed reality app where when they are, if you will, practicing on a cadaver, real experiences or real situations can come to life. So in case they do something and something goes wrong, the mixed reality application can force and simulate experiences and see how they react to it. And if they react well and do the right thing, great. If they make a mistake, then the mixed reality can tell them, oh, this is what you should have done. But then it becomes really interactive, which really drills in better learning, which is great. So when they go to their first surgery, they've got a bit more experience and would avoid the oops, I never quite got that training. And similarly on the machine and machinery side, that's dealing with, in many cases, very expensive equipment, but also very dangerous ones with safety concerns. So the fact is that instead of reading a boring, manual or flipping through drawings, you can now interact with all the tools and the assets, and the mixed reality application can show you the visual sequence of what steps you need to do to accomplish a task safely, and you can practice over and over. And so, some initial results from this one large airline company on the manufacturing side, they reported 90% improvement in first-time quality when compared to traditional methods, and also reduced the time to do the work by 30%. So, you can take that with plus minus however much, but certainly they were very enthusiastic about it, and that is certainly the trend that's happening. So mixed reality is, is another thing to keep an eye on. So then, the next sort of area of exploration is the combination of AI, artificial intelligence, with AR. So artificial intelligence is obviously a huge market, right? I mean, that's bigger than AR. But AI, just in terms of a definition, because it means a lot of things to different people, but I like the definition where AI is the ability of a computer program to function like a human brain. So the program can evaluate, behave, react like a human, and it can also think and learn like a human. And the biggest difference is that the AI, because it's technology, can handle things at scale and at speeds that humans could never match. Okay, so when you combine these two technologies together, you can really create some innovative experiences. So the example here is really cooler if you watch the video. Okay, so I know Jen's going to post the link. So I encourage you to look at the video, because I'm not going to do it justice when I briefly describe it. But I remember a wow moment when I saw this. So this app basically allows you to be a content creator, is what it allows you to do. So you can use this to create an AI-powered virtual character using machine learning and natural language processing, which is all behind the scenes. And then you can make that character do different things. It can respond on its own, and then you can bring it into the real world, is what's really cool about it. So in this example, just on the left is you just type in to describe your virtual character. So what it says here is, I'd like a middle-aged man who looks like Patrick Stewart, but with a British butler's voice. And then you can see in the middle is what the AI generated. He then talks, and you can type in whatever you want him to say, and he'll say it with a British butler's voice. So if you had put in, a young millennial female, then it would be a woman in a lady's voice, unless you wanted them to have a guy's voice. So you could do that if you wanted. And then you can interact, and they can interact, but then you bring them into the real world. So you can see that character now standing, moving on this person's deck. And then you can also bring it inside your house and interact. So again, it's just really cool and you're creative, you can think about where this takes you. Okay. All right. So then where do you get started, right? I mean, there's so many places. It can certainly be overwhelming. The way I like to start, and I kind of suggest people, is your goal is not to implement AR, right? I mean, AR is a tool that you can use in a lot of ways. And so I liken it to a hammer in terms of being a tool, right? You can use a hammer to help, build a house, but you can also use a hammer to demolish a house. You can use a hammer to protect yourself. And then there are also like jugglers, entertainers who kind of are flipping, hammers, up and down through the air. So they use the tool, but for different purposes, but for a goal that they have. So what I always like to suggest is think about what your business goals are, what you specifically want to achieve, and then think about how AR could be the right tool and then the right implementation. So it's always goal first, sort of technology second. And so the framework that I've just kind of created throughout my experiences to really be being able to really deliver digital strategies and marketing strategies fast and execute on them and minimize mistakes is this framework called the 12 C's. And really, it's based on the premise of these 12 C's, and you can kind of read them from customers to connections, which is marketing and reach, through conversion, like free trial to paid and the marketing funnel, etc. All of these are tightly integrated together, right? They don't exist in a vacuum. And many companies look at these sort of sequentially. And so they'll, let's do this first, then do that. And that takes a lot of time, and then you'll miss things. And then you'll be way down in the project, you'll be like, hey, I forgot this. So my approach, and I just suggest it for you to consider, is look at these holistically when you're designing a strategy, and certainly also applies to an AR application, right? You need to know who your customers are, what they want, what's your commerce model behind it, how are you going to handle the community and social media, etc. So in terms of execution, I could go on like forever about these 12 C's, but just a few points I thought I would just share. So one is on the content side, right? Again, cost, barrier to entry, where do I get started? The fact is you should just try and jump in, right? There are different technologies that are free that you can try, like QR codes. And I don't want to talk about vendor names, but if you just do a search, you can get started for free. Again, when I was at the book publisher, we use Google Lens. But you can always repackage and repurpose content that you already have, right? So I had done videos, but it could be your videos. You can chop them up into little pieces, or audio clips, or interviews that were done. I mean, images, animated GIFs. You can take all of it, just so you're starting with something already. The cost for content updates is just that, depending on what your application is, if you need to update the content in an app, it can be done, but you just want to be aware of it. So if you had to update content daily, that's pretty tough. If it's once a month, okay. But my point is you're looking ahead and thinking about that now as part of the 12C, so you'll get surprised from a budget perspective later. Cost for scalability is a big one. So one of the challenges that I had with the book publishing example was, you know, we wanted that AR experience to live forever. It wasn't a marketing campaign where we only wanted it for 3 months or 2 months and it was over, right? We want that experience forever because the book lives forever. But to keep that experience running with some other vendors we had talked to was a monthly fee. And clearly there's diminishing returns. So frankly, from a business model perspective, it didn't work out. But we knew that because we figured it out then, as opposed to starting a first project, putting in a lot of money and then saying, uh-oh, we can't scale. So scalability is something to consider. And then also the longevity, right? Is it permanent or not? And then also think about how much content or products you want to put through. If you're a large company and you have to put through 300 SKUs, right, and create 3D, well, that's a lot. If you're a smaller company, you know, you're not going to do that, right? But you do want to think about how many products you have or how many can you get started with. From a customer experience perspective, you can create a new app, right? Like a brand new dedicated app, like some companies have done, or you can add AR capabilities to an existing app, or web AR, which is basically using sort of more modern browsers on phones. You don't need to download anything, right? So that's up and coming. And then you can always use an existing platform as well, you know, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and others. It's also important to think about friction from the user perspective, and that's an input into which user experience you go with, because you have to create awareness, right? So when we created those AR for those 6 books, it was like, well, how do we let, you know, the market know that those are AR enabled, right? Do we put a sticker on the book saying AR inside or AR enabled or a Google Lens logo or what? But you need to be thinking about how do you message out to create awareness. And certainly another friction point would be if you needed them to download, you know, a standalone app. Okay, so there are pros and cons to it, but again, you want to think through those things, and also obviously think through the level of sophistication of functionality. Again, like you know, if you're starting out, probably good to do the crawl side first. Collaboration, obviously, you know, marketers would probably be, and I don't want to be, you know, too presumptive, but either you're working with your agency, right, that could do it, or you could be collaborating with internal IT or maybe your product team. So just like any initiative and anything with technology, because there's also data behind the scenes that you can collect on customer data and usage, it's important to obviously strike that strong relationship and understanding as to who's doing what and who's driving feature sets and who's prioritizing, et cetera. I mean, it gets a little bit dicey sometimes between who owns what, but always good to get that straight. And then, you know, this should just be part of your digital strategy, right? I mean, ideally, the AR isn't this little island sitting out there, you know, way out of the Pacific. That is part of your overall plan, assuming it makes sense. But again, it also does go into a process and workflow. And then with the things above in other areas, again, you probably would have enough to convince leadership. So that's always key. And then the computer side, and this is, you know, relates to, again, sort of a new app or an existing, but also what platform do you want to build it on? As I mentioned, there are some tools out there that are a bit more on the self-serve side. There are pretty sophisticated SaaS AR products, and then you always build things using, you know, Apple or Google's developers kit. So there are options there that just need to be thought through. Okay, so these are a few points I just wanted to share, at least to kind of get some thoughts going as you plan out your activities. So although, you know, we may be already in the future, there's certainly more to come. So this is a video that I just realized, Jen, I didn't have in my list to you, but we should get this out. This is just a really fun video, hyper reality of what the future really could look like if you had that AR-enabled contact lens or eyeball. It could look something like this video, but I recommend you sit down and fasten your seatbelts when you look at this. So I think that's about it. So again, here's my contact information. Feel free to, you know, reach out if you want to shoot the breeze, if you want to help out with it, if you need me to help out with anything, or if you want to, you know, reminisce about Jim Rice and his amazing 1978 season where he batted .315 and had 46 home runs and 139 RBIs.
All right, now you're one of us. Now you're one of us, okay?
That came straight from memory. Huh?
That's awesome, Lee. I mean, really great sense of like a range. I mean, When Lee and I are preparing this, everybody, I mean, he's worked a lot in publishing, but we're also in a market where we have a lot of healthcare and biotech. And, you know, MIT Media Lab has been working with AR for the medical field for decades. I'm probably completely misquoting that. So if you're with MIT Media Lab, don't get me in trouble. But there's so much innovation happening here that I think that it's really important to see a range, because, you know, sometimes we'll look at something as, and we're in the B2B field, but a B2C case study, we'll say like, whoa, that's right, that works for me. I loved Kathleen's comment in this chat when we were looking at this South Korean case study, Lee. Kathleen was saying how it was a really good use of consumer downtime. Like, I think that when you're talking about engaging experiences, like, how do you use that downtime that a consumer would start to engage with their product where they would never expect to engage? What do you think about that comment?
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely an untapped scenario, right? So if you think about wait times, right? Where are people waiting, right? They are waiting online for a subway, right? Or they could be at a restaurant or fast food restaurant and they're waiting. Or they could be, you know, in a waiting room at a doctor's office at the DMV, right? So those are all opportunities to be able to create an experience, an AR experience for them to do something. And it could be in the form, in certain situations, of a game, right, with cool content, or it could be with content. For example, if you're in a hospital's waiting room, clearly, what are you thinking about? You could be thinking about insurance, right? You know, or what are the right questions to ask my doctor? So if you're in that field, right, in that industry, maybe you create something that's specific to them and what information they need at that point in time. And so I think those are untapped opportunities. I've actually worked on one of those at NBC Universal where we were planning something out with Starbucks. We wanted to have AR and also all the digital screens connected so that when you were waiting, you'd actually be absorbing content and experiences as well. So I think that's a big area for people to consider, because definitely you would have a captive eyeball.
Yeah, I used to do a ton of AR for Estee Lauder companies, all their brands. And so a lot of those things about trying on the lipstick from home, like, you don't want to have to let that counter experience be only at the counter. You're trying to replicate that somewhere else in their home. So you're trying to get that experience in different types of locations. And I think that's really interesting about some of those consumer experiences. You really get to try and see what it looks like on you before you buy. And I think that that's really relatable to all of us, as we don't want to try on clothes right now, or we want to try a new product, but don't want to spend the money to bring it home.
Yeah, and I think even just from a consumer perspective, I know for, you know, sort of the folks I know, just going, you know, into, you know, like a Macy's and going through the makeup and the cosmetic area, frankly, it's kind of, you know, intimidating to some people, right? You know, and, you know, sometimes it's not comfortable to sit down with somebody. So I think, you know, there's, again, that would be then another market, right? That segment or that cohort that could be reached with, you know, sort of this buy and try on your own type experiences.
Can I ask you a question about convincing your teams internally to do it? I know that when I did one for ExxonMobil in China, it was just like, it was, granted, I was working with a bunch of traditional advertisers. So when you're talking about anything digital with traditional advertisers, forget it. But that was a big challenge for us. How have you been able to sell these internally, regardless of the size of company? I think that that's something that could be really relevant.
Yeah, so, you know, I think with big or small companies, right, whatever size you are, like, you'll ask the question, hey, you know, ask, you know, whatever, the exec team, hey, do you want to innovate? And the answer is, of course, yes. Yeah, we want to innovate, right? Who doesn't want to innovate? But the next thing is, but we don't have money, right? We don't have time. We don't have resources. And so one of the key things is to be able to have a framework and approach to, frankly, get past all of those. And again, you know, in my experience, I've gotten past those in various ways. But I will say the underlying theme is this, is when I've created like innovation groups at companies, I am a big believer in self-discovery on how to do things, okay, by yourself and your team, and then to create prototypes and then to have the 12 C's figured out so you can answer every question. So at the book publisher, right, company had never done AR before. So I created a innovation team and we said, let's focus on AR. And I did some quick research, found a good free AR tool, frankly, learned it on YouTube, built out a number myself of apps myself, brought it to the innovation group and said, and gave them a training session over lunch. Okay, got pizza, come in at lunchtime. I'm going to walk you through how to create what I'm going to show you, because I just created this AR experience for this book with these hot spots that bring up all this cool content.
Yeah.
I showed them how to do it. Then I said, let's break into groups. You're in the children's group, you're in the romance group, you're in the trade fiction. You guys go off, create your own and come back. But my point is, we created all these prototypes with resources and team members that wanted to do it. So I'm a big believer in tapping into untapped resources because they want to learn, right? They want to contribute more. So if you can find those people in your organizations, you then build the prototype, wow, and if you are the ringleader and you're looking at 12 C's, you can kind of lay out the effort, the way to scale it, potential business model. Business model is always a little bit tough, especially on the revenue side, but you can then bring in case studies or other examples or other comps and make a good case. But I believe prototyping, showing it, you can't talk. You can't just say, hey, AR is cool. You've got to show them something that they can touch and say, holy smokes, this is cool. And you guys did this yourself and you kind of know how to scale it or how to build it out. So I believe in prototypes and in companies finding untapped resources that are motivated to, kind of partner and innovate with you.
That's great advice. That's great advice of any size of organization. We've got time for one question, which is on the chat. I've been kind of watching them here. Peter wants to know, do you think that AR will change because of the pandemic, or do you feel more brands are going to make it more mainstream? What are your thoughts now that the pandemic's here? I mean, you touched on that earlier, but we want to give you a little airtime before we start to wrap up here.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And I think the pandemic has accelerated AR like it has accelerated many different technologies, right? I mean, we just think of Zoom, right? And all these streaming events. I mean, there were a lot of organizations in different industries that before the pandemic, they'd be like, hey, we can't do it, right? You just can't do it. It's too difficult. It's not worth it. No one will use it. But obviously now people are. So it's a forcing function. I think AR is the same way because of the benefits we've talked about. But there's another reason, which is that during the pandemic, and I perhaps for many of you just as marketers, right? You want to be reaching out to your existing customers and you want to be reaching out to new prospects. But in the age of COVID, it sometimes is not too much to talk about, frankly, right? So if you have an AR application and you launch it, that's news, right? It's like it's a good reason. It's a value add reason to reach out to all those people that, again, maybe you haven't been able to do as much with. So I think it's also a good reason to reconnect, and that the COVID situation, creates those opportunities with AR as a solution.
Perfect. Well, Lee, we're just so grateful for your coming and spending your time. There's been some really fun chat. People have been sharing links to create QR codes and special designs. So thank you everybody for everything that's happening in the chat and sharing with each other. All of the links to the case studies are still here, but I do see the request to send something out afterwards, which we can figure out how to do. I know we have one more slide because as we're wrapping up, I know Helen just wants to let us know about upcoming events, but Lee, we're just so grateful. And as always, it's just always great to work with you, buddy.
Great. Well, thank you, Jen, for all of your help along the way, and thank you everybody for your time. I hope it was fun.
Of course, Lee. Thank you so much. What a wonderful presentation, and I love all the ideas that you gave us to all different types of audiences that we have present tonight. So I'm Helen Pinchansky, VP of Programming, and I wanted to make sure I let you know what's coming up from AMA Boston. So hopefully all of you can join us next month of a monthly virtual mingle that we're having. And this time we're going to have Michael Brenner as our speaker. And after that, we're experimenting with something new where we are going to have breakout rooms so everyone can go ahead and network and have that opportunity. And also on August 20th, we're going to have our virtual panel, and we're bringing a intermingle of retailing and marketing. So we are looking forward to have everyone joining us. And please complete the survey after our wonderful event tonight so we can hear from you and make things better. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming from all over the country. We appreciate it.